Max Chen had stopped feeling things 3 years ago. The day the mining accident on Kepler 442b took his daughter, something inside him had simply switched off. He ran his freight station on the edge of human space with mechanical efficiency, eating nutrition bars and sleeping 4 hours a night. It was enough. It had to be. The Lixari refugee ship arrived on a Tuesday. Max watched from his office window as the battered vessel limped into dock, trailing coolant and desperation. The Lixari were a peaceful species, tall, willowy beings with opalescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Their homeworld had been caught in the crossfire of a war they hadn't started, destroyed by the Krell Empire's scorched earth tactics. He'd agreed to interview one refugee for the station's kitchen position. He didn't want to, but Lisa, his second-in-command, had insisted. "You can't live on protein bars forever, Max," she'd said, her dark eyes holding that stubborn determination he'd learned not to argue with. "And they need help. We have room." The Lixari who entered his office moved with the careful slowness of someone carrying something precious. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that flickered between pale blue and gray, colors Max's research told him indicated grief and anxiety. In her forearms, she cradled a bundle. "My name is Velsera," she said, her voice like wind chimes. The translator implant rendered her words in Mandarin, Max's preferred language. I was a culinary artist on Lixar Prime. I have credentials, but I understand if..." The bundle moved. A tiny face emerged, no larger than Max's fist, with enormous eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies, swirling purples and golds that locked onto Max's face. His breath caught. "This is my daughter, Siriel," Velsera said quietly. "I apologize. I have no one to leave her with. If this disqualifies me..." "No." The word came out harder than Max intended. He cleared his throat. "No, it's fine. Can you start tomorrow?" Lisa found him an hour later, staring at the financial reports without seeing them. "You hired her," she said. "It wasn't a question. She's qualified." "Max." Lisa sat on the edge of his desk. "You haven't hired anyone in 3 years. You've been running on empty, pushing everyone away." She paused. "What changed?" Max didn't answer. Couldn't. How could he explain that when that child's eyes had met his, something had cracked in the wall he'd built around his heart? Velsera proved to be extraordinary. Within a week, the station's mess hall transformed from a grim necessity into something else entirely. She cooked human food with an artist's intuition, somehow making protein taste like home. But more than that, she brought life to the cold metal corridors. And everywhere Velsera went, Siriel watched with those impossible eyes. Max found himself taking meals in the mess hall instead of his office. He told himself it was to monitor the new hire's performance. He didn't examine why he timed his visits to when Velsera brought Siriel to work. One evening, 3 weeks after Velsera's arrival, Max found the Lixari in the kitchen after hours, her skin flickering deep purple, the color of profound sorrow. Siriel was crying, a sound like crystalline bells breaking. "I apologize, Commander Chen," Velsera said quickly. "She is teething. I will take her to quarters. Let me..." The words escaped before Max could stop them. He held out his arms, and to his surprise, Velsera handed him the child. Siriel was impossibly light, her skin cool and smooth. When she looked up at him, her crying stopped. Those galaxy eyes studied his face with an intensity that seemed to see past his carefully maintained walls. "My daughter died," Max heard himself say. 3 years ago. Mining accident. She was 6. Velsera's skin rippled to a soft teal. Compassion. "My husband died defending our world." Siriel never met him. They stood in silence, 2 broken people holding on to fragments of what they'd lost. "I see my daughter when I look at you," Velsera said softly. "Not in appearance, but in the way you have buried yourself. On Lixar, we believe the dead do not wish the living to follow them into darkness." "And if the darkness is easier?" Max asked. Siriel reached up with one tiny hand and touched his face. Her palm was warm and her eyes seemed to say, "But you're still here." Lisa noticed the change immediately. Max started attending staff meetings in person. He approved the expansion of the mess hall Velsera had proposed. He even smiled when one of the dock workers made a joke. "She's good for you," Lisa said one morning, catching Max watching Velsera teach Siriel to eat solid food. Both of them. It's not like that, Max protested, isn't it? Lisa raised an eyebrow. Max, I've known you for 15 years. I watched you shut down after Emma died. And now, she gestured at him, you're coming back. That night, the Krell came. 3 warships appeared at the system's edge, their message brutal in its simplicity. Surrender all Lixari refugees or be destroyed. The Krell didn't make empty threats. Max stood on the command deck, every instinct screaming at him to comply. It was logical. 1 refugee versus 300 human lives. Then he thought of Siriel's eyes, of the way Velsera's skin had shifted to warm amber, the color of hope when he'd told her she could stay permanently, of the life that had started seeping back into his frozen world. Lisa, he said quietly, send a message to the Krell. Tell them the human coalition doesn't negotiate with war criminals. Lisa's grin was fierce. About damn time. The battle was brief but brutal. Max's station was a freight hub, not a military installation. But they had defensive capabilities. And more importantly, they had something to fight for. When the Krell retreated, 3 ships reduced to 2, Max found Velsera in the shelter, clutching Siriel. Her skin was pure white terror. It's over, he said, kneeling beside them. You're safe. I promise. Velsera's skin slowly shifted to gold. Gratitude. Wonder. You fought for us. Yes. Max looked at Siriel, who watched him with those knowing eyes. Someone recently reminded me that the dead don't want the living to follow them into darkness. He held out his arms, and Siriel reached for him, making that sound that was almost like laughter. Max Chen started feeling things again on a Tuesday. It hurt. God, it hurt like learning to walk on a broken leg. But as he held an alien child in the ruins of his careful emptiness, he understood something. Grief didn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes, it was just the middle.